past midnight when Dimas finally arrived at Parangtritis Beach. The salty wind howled around him like a mournful song, stirring his thoughts. He had heard stories, whispers really, of the ocean queen who ruled the southern sea. Nyi Roro Kidul, they called her. Some spoke her name with reverence, others with fear. She was a myth, a legend. But legends had roots. Dimas wasn't a believer. He came here for his final thesis, studying local folklore and its impact on cultural tourism. His professor had insisted Parangtritis held one of the most compelling examples. So he rented a small homestay, just a short walk from the waves. Locals warned him not to wear green. The queen's color, they said, but he laughed it off, wearing his olive hoodie proudly. On his first night, the beach was deserted. The moon hung low, half veiled in cloud, casting silver light across the restless waves. Dimas sat near the shoreline, recording ambient sounds, the wind, the surf. But then came something else. A whisper. He removed his headphones, confused. It wasn't the wind, it was softer, closer, a woman's voice, distant but beckoning. Come, he turned. No one was there. He chuckled nervously and resumed his work. Maybe he was tired. Maybe the sea was playing tricks. But the whispers grew louder. Come to me. His skin prickled. Dimas stood up, scanning the dark dunes behind him. Again, no one. Then from the corner of his eye, he saw movement, white silk fluttering along the shore. He squinted. A figure stood ankle-deep in the waves. Long black hair, white gown. The wind should have blown her hair, but it didn't. She was still, unnaturally still. Miss, he called out. No answer. He took a step forward. The waves lapped at her feet but did not touch her gown. The sand seemed to sink beneath her, as if she were one with the earth. And then, she turned her face. Dimas gasped. Her eyes were the color of the sea during a storm, swirling, endless, and ancient. Suddenly a wave crashed violently, soaking him to the waist. When he blinked the salt from his eyes, the woman was gone, vanished into the tide. Shaken, he rushed back to the homestay. The landlady, a wrinkled old woman, saw his soaked clothes and pale face. She shook her head. You saw her, didn't you? She whispered. Dimas stammered. Who? The queen. Nyi Roro Kidul. You should not have worn green. Dimas didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, the image of the woman in the waves returned. Her stillness, her eyes, that silent, commanding presence. It was more than unsettling. It felt ancient, like something had marked him. By morning, the sun's warmth did little to comfort him. He sat at the small breakfast table of the homestay, sipping bitter black coffee. The old landlady, Ibu Shri, watched him closely from the kitchen, as if waiting for him to speak. Finally, he asked, Who is she, really? That woman last night. Ibu Shri sat beside him, her voice soft and weathered. We call her Nyi Roro Kidul, the queen of the southern sea. She is not just a spirit. She is a power, a guardian, a curse. Dimas raised an eyebrow. A curse? Ibu Shri nodded. Long ago, she was a princess, betrayed, exiled, cursed by black magic. She sought the sea, and it embraced her. She made a pact with the forces that dwell deep beneath the waves. Now she lives forever, reigning over the ocean, taking what she desires. And she desires tourists in green hoodies? Dimas tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. She despises the color green, Ibu Shri said firmly. It was the color of the royal family that betrayed her. Anyone who wears green here invites her wrath or her seduction. Dimas looked down at his hoodie, suddenly aware of its damp weight. He pulled it off, feeling cold despite the humidity. She appeared to you, Ibu Shri continued. That means she has noticed you. That is not a blessing. Later that day, Dimas wandered back to the beach. He needed answers and photos. He snapped shots of the waves, the rocky cliffs, the worn shrine near the edge of the beach, adorned with wilted flowers and bits of cloth. Locals said the shrine was for Nyi Roro Kidul, Offerings were made every Friday night. A small sign read, Larang memakai baju hijau, forbidden to wear green. That night, the whispers returned. But this time, they weren't only outside, they were inside his room. The mirror fogged as if someone had breathed against it. He stood frozen, watching as letters slowly appeared. You are mine now. He stumbled backward, heart pounding. The mirror cleared on its own. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered, hands trembling. A soft voice, calm as a lullaby, said, Come to the sea. Then silence. Outside, the wind howled louder than ever, and from the direction of the beach, a single wave thundered, so powerful that the sound shook the walls. Dimas barely slept again. He sat in bed with the lights on, a knife on the nightstand. Not that it would help against ghosts or sea spirits. The message on the mirror had vanished by morning, but the memory of it burned in his mind. He decided to return to Yogyakarta the next day. This had gone beyond a research trip. It felt like he had trespassed somewhere sacred, and now something was following him. But first he needed to document everything, if only to make sense of it. He returned to the beach with his notebook and camera, determined to record every strange detail before he left. The sea was oddly calm, too calm. The waves lapped gently, as if luring him closer, whispering like they had before. The shrine looked different. Fresh offerings had been placed. Flowers, fruits, a piece of white cloth, and beside them something strange. An old waterlogged book. Curious, Dimas knelt and picked it up. Its pages were swollen and stained, but some writing remained. It was a journal, written in Old Javanese, but certain parts had been translated into Bahasa. She visits me in dreams now. Her voice is honey and thunder. I fear she will take me soon, but I cannot resist her call. Dimas flipped forward. Green is her hatred, blue is her sorrow, white is her power. I wore green once, and now she follows. Then the last legible page. The sea is not water, it is her. Every drop, her breath, every wave, her hand. And when she wants something, the sea rises. Suddenly, the wind shifted. The waves surged without warning, crashing over the shoreline. Dimas stumbled back, the book slipping from his hands and swept away. Then he saw her, standing far out in the water, as if walking upon the surface. Her white dress shimmered, her hair danced in slow motion, untouched by wind. This time she smiled. Dimas turned and ran, faster than he ever had, back to the homestay. As he slammed the door behind him, Ibu Shri was already waiting, clutching a small bowl of burning incense. She knows your name now, the old woman said gravely. I'm leaving tomorrow, Dimas gasped. No, Ibu Shri replied. You cannot leave until she releases you, and you have angered her. He froze. What does she want? Ibu Shri's eyes glistened. She wants what was taken, a soul, a memory. Maybe yours. That night, Dimas dreamed. He stood beneath the ocean, breathing water like air. Nyi Roro Kidul floated before him, her fingers brushing his cheek. Stay, she whispered. You belong to me now. Dimas awoke with a start, gasping for breath, as though he'd just been pulled from deep underwater. His clothes were soaked, completely drenched, despite the fact that he hadn't left his room all night. A puddle formed beneath his bed, salt water dripping from his sleeves and hair. The air smelled like the ocean. Panicked, he ran to Ibu Shri's room, banging on her door. She opened it slowly, incense already burning in her hands, as if she'd been waiting for him. She entered your dreams, didn't she? She asked softly. She was there, Dimas whispered, trembling. Under the sea. I was breathing water. She's begun the claiming, Ibu Shri muttered. If you do nothing, she will take you completely, body and soul. You'll disappear like the others. Others? Ibu Shri hesitated, then led him to a small trunk in the back room. Inside were faded newspaper clippings, handwritten notes, even some photos. Missing persons, tourists, locals, all vanishing near the southern coast. Most of them young men. Many last seen, wearing green. She doesn't take everyone, Ibu Shri explained. Only the ones who draw her attention. The ones who wear green or disturb her shrines. Or the ones she desires. Dimas flipped through the files, his heart sinking. Some of the faces looked eerily familiar. One photo in particular made his blood run cold. A young man standing near the beach, camera slung over his shoulder. His eyes seemed blank, distant. In the corner of the photo, barely visible, was a blur of white just above the waterline. Like a dress. What happened to them? He asked. Some walked into the ocean and were never seen again. Some jumped from cliffs. A few just vanished in their sleep. Ibu Shri handed him a talisman, a woven charm of black thread, bones, and sea salt. This may protect you for now, but it will not stop her. She is ancient, more powerful than we can imagine. That night, Dimas didn't sleep. He bolted his door, placed the talisman under his pillow, and sat with the lights on. Hours passed in silence until a knock. Not at the door. At the window. He turned, heart pounding. Outside the glass stood the woman again. Her hair floated like seaweed in slow motion, her face calm, beautiful, and terrible. She raised one hand and tapped the glass once. Crack. A fine fracture spread across the window. Tap, crack. Then her voice, not through the glass, but inside his head. Why do you run from what is already yours? The lights flickered, the wind howled, and from his bathroom came the sound of water, rushing, pouring, though no tap had been turned. The ocean had followed him. The sound of running water wouldn't stop. Dimas crept toward the bathroom, each step heavier than the last. The door was ajar. Steam curled from the crack like breath from an unseen mouth. His trembling hand reached forward, pushing it open. The sink was overflowing. Salt water gushed from the tap, endless, violent. The mirror was fogged over, but again, words began to appear. You cannot run from the sea. He yanked the faucet handle, but nothing changed. The water kept flowing, now pooling at his feet. It was freezing, burning his skin with a strange sting. He backed out of the room and slammed the door shut, jamming a towel beneath it. Then he noticed something horrifying. His arms. Thin white lines had appeared under his skin, webbing across his veins like seaweed. His blood looked diluted, paler. His heartbeat sounded like distant waves crashing in his ears. Dimas clutched the talisman tighter. This can't be real. This can't be happening. Morning couldn't come fast enough. He found Ibu Shri waiting in the kitchen, worry etched deep on her face. When he showed her his arms, she let out a sharp breath. You're already changing, she said. The sea has marked you. You are becoming one of hers. There has to be a way to stop it, Dimas insisted. A ritual, a reversal, something. There is one thing, Ibu Shri admitted, hesitating. An old rite, dangerous, forbidden to most. It must be done at the sacred cliff, where the queen spirit first rose from the sea. Then that's where I'll go. No, she snapped. You don't understand. If she sees you there, if you perform the rite, she may not release you. She may destroy you. Or worse, take your place. Dimas stood firm. Then I'll take the risk. That afternoon, he packed a bag with offerings. Jasmine, a piece of batik cloth, dried fish, and a small vial of his own blood, following Ibu Shri's instructions to the letter. She also gave him a dagger, small, old, its blade blackened with age. Do not let go of this, she warned, even if she tempts you, even if she pleads. As dust settled, Dimas climbed the path to the sacred cliff. The wind grew stronger, colder. The waves below crashed louder, more violent than ever. The air carried the scent of wet roses and salt. At the edge of the cliff, he knelt and placed the offerings in a circle, the dagger in his lap. He closed his eyes and began the chant Ibu Shri had taught him. For a moment, silence. Then the wind stopped. The sea stilled, and a voice behind him, gentle, sorrowful, spoke. Why do you summon me with weapons, when all I have offered is love? Dimas turned. She stood there, Nyi Roro Kidul. Her eyes shimmered like the deep sea. Her gown flowed as though underwater, though the air was dry. She was impossibly beautiful, terrifying in her grace. I don't belong to you, Dimas said, though his voice trembled. She stepped closer, her bare feet not touching the ground. But you do. You came to my shores. You wore the cursed color. You called my name in your thoughts. Her hand reached out. Come home, Dimas. Dimas froze. The wind had vanished. The crashing of the waves below muted into silence. All that remained was her voice. Low, melodic, impossible to resist. Nyi Roro Kidul extended her hand, her fingers long and delicate, nails painted the color of emeralds deep underwater. His body wanted to move, to surrender, to step into her embrace and let everything else fade. But something inside him, a voice older than fear, whispered, Don't. He gripped the dagger tighter, holding it between them. I came for answers, he said, forcing each word out. Not to join you. She smiled gently. You already have. The moment you stepped into my dream, you crossed the line between land and sea. I didn't ask for this. No one ever does, she whispered. Suddenly the earth trembled beneath his feet. A wave crashed far below with unnatural force, sending a gust of salt spray up the cliffside. Nyi Roro Kidul's eyes darkened. I offer peace, eternity, but you choose fear and steel? Her voice deepened, no longer soothing. Then you must prove yourself. The sea behind her roared, rising unnaturally high, a massive wave building as if drawn by her command. Dimas stumbled backward, nearly slipping on the edge of the cliff. You said I trespassed, he shouted, but I didn't mean to. I didn't know. Intent does not absolve the curse. The wave surged. Dimas opened the vial of blood Ibu Shri had given him and poured it into the circle of offerings. At once the air vibrated. The earth pulsed beneath him. The waves stopped mid-air, frozen, as if time itself had been halted. Nyi Roro Kidul tilted her head. Ah, clever, she said softly. You learned the ancient, right? He stood, the dagger still in hand, breathing hard. I just want to go home. You cannot return unchanged. Her voice was calm now, even mournful. You've touched my realm. My memories are in you. My sorrow, too. The sky above flickered between twilight and storm. All around him, the ocean seemed to wait. You have two choices, she said. Return to your world, but carry me in your dreams forever, or stay and become part of mine. Why me? He whispered. Her answer came with a smile that held centuries of longing. Because you listened. The sea began to retreat. Slowly the tide fell, the wave melting back into the depths. Nyi Roro Kidul stepped backward, fading with each step, her image dissolving into sea mist. You have until the next full moon, she said. After that, if you are still near my waters, I will come for you again. And then she was gone. The wind returned. The waves, once angry and colossal, now gentle and distant. Dimas collapsed to his knees, shaking, the dagger falling from his grip. But in his mind, her voice remained. You cannot run from the sea. Dimas returned to the homestay, pale and silent. Ibu Shri took one look at his face and said nothing, only guided him to sit while she brewed bitter herbal tea and placed a bowl of burning herbs beneath his chair. The smoke rose around him in tight, swirling columns, clinging to his skin. She let me go, he finally whispered, but only for now, until the next full moon. Ibu Shri didn't speak right away. She stirred the fire and added crushed sea salt. That is mercy, but not freedom. Dimas touched his arms, where pale veins still traced under his skin like threads of frost. He hadn't noticed until now. His fingers were slightly webbed, thin membranes stretched between them, faint but real. I'm changing, he said. She's marked you. You've carried her image in your thoughts, stood where few dare stand. That's enough for the sea to notice, enough for her to thread herself into your body. I need to undo this. There is no undoing, Ibu Shri replied, but there may be balance. She handed him a small box wrapped in red and black cloth. Inside is a relic, a shard of coral once blessed by the queen herself, long ago, before she became what she is now. Dimas opened it slowly. Inside was a jagged piece of deep red coral, pulsing faintly with warmth. This belonged to her? He asked. It was taken from her sanctuary, Ibu Shri said, lowering her voice. It holds some of her essence. You can use it to speak to her, truly speak without being pulled under. Where is her sanctuary? Ibu Shri hesitated. Far beneath the sea, but there are gateways, places where the veil is thin. There's one deep in the forest, hidden within a cave behind a waterfall. It leads to her mirror realm. Dimas exhaled slowly. Then that's where I'll go. She stared at him. You must understand. This is not a place for the living. If you go, you might not return as yourself. Or at all. Then I'll take that risk. That night before he left, Dimas dreamt again. He stood on a beach of black sand. The sky was crimson. The ocean was still. So still it looked like glass. In the distance stood Nyi Roro Kidul, wearing a crown of coral and kelp, her eyes like green fire. She spoke without moving her lips. You seek to undo what is already woven. You cannot sever the thread, only follow it to its end. When he woke, the coral shard pulsed with heat in his palm. It was time to enter her realm. The forest was older than anything Dimas had walked through before, thick with twisted roots and silence so dense it pressed against his ears. Guided by Ibu Shri's map and the pulsing coral shard in his hand, he pushed deeper into the woods, until the trees became too dense for light to filter through. There, hidden behind a wall of vines, he heard it, the rush of falling water. He found the waterfall tucked in a rocky gorge. Beneath it, barely visible, was a crevice, just wide enough for a man to slip through. The coral shard glowed brighter in his palm, warm as blood. With one final breath, Dimas stepped into the torrent. Cold slammed into him like glass shattering. On the other side, silence. He emerged into a vast, airless cavern lit by glowing moss. A silver pool stretched before him, so still it seemed solid. Dimas approached the edge, heart hammering. He could see his reflection, but something was wrong. His image stared back with different eyes, green and luminous, and it smiled when he didn't. The coral shard pulsed wildly. Without thinking, he touched the surface. The water opened. He was pulled downward, not drowning, not falling, but transitioning. The world shifted colors, sounds, and meaning. Down became sideways. Darkness became light. His lungs didn't burn. He floated through a tunnel of shifting light, where shapes moved along the edges. Spirits, memories, regrets. Then, suddenly, stillness. He stood in a throne room made of coral and bone. The walls pulsed like the inside of a living creature. Strange symbols writhed along the floor. At the far end, upon a throne carved from a whale's skull, sat Nyi Roro Kidul. She was no longer the vision from the shore. She was terrible. Her beauty was not human, but elemental. Her hair floated in water that wasn't there. Her crown shimmered with starfish and sea serpents. Her voice echoed from every corner of the chamber when she spoke. You have come willingly, across realms, into my truth. Why? Dimas bowed, not from respect, but instinct. To speak, not in dreams, not in curses, as one soul to another. She laughed, and the walls vibrated with it. Few have dared such arrogance. I don't want to be yours. I don't want your gift. I came to return what was taken. He held up the coral shard. It flared bright red in his hand. Her smile faded. For the first time, the Queen of the Southern Sea looked surprised. That piece of me, she said quietly, stolen long ago. I offer it back, if you release me, if you stop what's happening to me. She rose from the throne, gown spreading like a tide across the floor. You think a broken fragment can undo a bond? You think sacrifice grants you control? He didn't answer. He only stepped forward and placed the coral on the floor between them. The moment it touched the ground, the chamber shook. The water above rippled. The walls groaned. From somewhere in the deep, a voice older than hers whispered, "She was not always a queen. She was once human too." Nyi Roro Kidul narrowed her eyes. "You've awakened something ancient," she said, "and now neither of us can escape what comes next." The chamber pulsed with growing energy. The coral shard at Dimas's feet glowed brighter, casting eerie shadows on the coral-carved walls. Something ancient stirred, like a sleeping leviathan roused from centuries of slumber. Nyi Roro Kidul stepped back, not in fear, but in recognition. "This place remembers," she murmured. The air, or what passed for it, grew thick. The symbols on the floor blazed, and from the walls emerged ghostly forms, flickering images of a woman, barefoot in royal silks, crying as she was cast into the sea. A younger Nyi Roro Kidul before she became the queen. Dimas watched, spellbound, as the visions unfolded. A court of jealous men, whispers of betrayal, in a sentence sealed by a curse. They had called her unclean, unnatural, accused her of dark magic. They exiled her to the ocean, bound with chains of gold and prayers of fear. "She was a princess," Dimas whispered. "I was," Nyi Roro Kidul said. Her voice trembled. "A daughter of the Mataram court. They feared what they didn't understand. My sickness, my strength." She stepped closer to the vision, her ghostly younger self vanishing into the sea. "I didn't die, I transformed. The ocean accepted what men rejected." She turned to Dimas, her expression unreadable. "You wanted to know the truth. Here it is. I was made, not born. The sea gave me eternity, but took my name, my warmth, my soul." Dimas's throat tightened. "Why do you curse others? Why trap them in your pain?" A long silence. "I do not seek to curse," she said softly. "I seek to remember. Every soul I touch, every dream I haunt, helps me remember who I was." She gestured toward him. "You carry pieces of me now. Memories, power, that cannot be undone." Dimas shook his head. "Then what am I supposed to do?" "Accept," she said, "or descend. Become part of the tide." The coral shard suddenly split in two, cracking with a sound like thunder underwater. A burst of blinding light filled the chamber. When it faded, Dimas was standing in the middle of a shallow pool. Around him, the ghost of the queen's past wept silently, and the queen herself stood on the other side, eyes closed. "You have reminded me of who I was," she whispered. "But now I must decide who I will become." Dimas took a hesitant step forward. "Will you let me go?" She looked at him, a hint of sorrow in her gaze. "I don't know yet." And then the floor gave way beneath him, plunging Dimas into darkness once more. The fall seemed endless. Dimas tumbled through liquid darkness, yet he could still breathe. It wasn't water, not entirely, but a space between worlds, heavy with forgotten voices and ancient sorrow. Around him, whispers echoed, not in words but in sensations. Grief, longing, fury. Images flashed across the darkness. The face of the young princess, chained and cast into the sea. The courtiers who laughed as she sank. The monstrous shape she became beneath the waves. And the centuries she spent gathering the souls of those who trespassed. Then came new memories. His own, but changed. Twisted. In one, he stood beside her throne. In another, he watched his reflection turn to sea foam. And in the last, he stood beside a vast army of drowned, waiting for her command. "No," Dimas growled. "I'm not yours." He reached for the coral shard, but it was gone. All he had was himself, and the sliver of will still resisting her call. A shape emerged in the distance, a gate made of whale bones, floating mid-ocean, adorned with seaweed and barnacles. As he drew closer, it pulsed with a strange power. Instinct told him, this is the way out. But standing before it was her. Nyi Roro Kidul, not in her royal form, but as the woman she once was, barefoot, trembling, soaked in seawater, chains still clinging to her wrists. "Why do you resist?" she asked, not commanding but pleading. "Because I'm not meant to stay here. But you carry my memories now. You see me." "I do," Dimas said, "and I won't forget you, but I won't become you." Silence stretched between them. Her form shimmered, shifting between the girl, the queen, the monster, the ghost. "You remind me of him," she said at last. Dimas blinked. "Who?" "My betrothed," she said quietly. "He tried to save me, and failed. You carry a spirit now. Maybe that's why I let you in." She turned to the gate, and with a wave of her hand, it opened. "I grant you passage, but with a price." Dimas tensed. "What kind of price?" "You'll return, one day, when the tide calls, not as a prisoner, but as my witness." The sea shimmered. He felt his body rise. "Promise me," she said as her image began to fade. "You'll tell them the truth, not just of the curse, but of the girl they drowned." Dimas nodded. "I promise." And with that, he passed through the gate, rising like a bubble through dark water, toward the world of the living. Dimas awoke with a gasp, as if surfacing from deep water. He lay on the rocky shore, the crash of the waves now distant. But the salt still clung to the air, thick with memory. The sky above was gray, tinged with the light of dawn. It was over. At least, it seemed so. But as his chest rose and fell, he could still feel the weight of her presence, lingering in the depths of his mind. He tried to sit up, but his body ached, as though every muscle had been stretched beyond its limit. His fingers were raw, almost trembling. But then he noticed something else. His eyes, reflecting back at him in the water, glowed faintly green. Nyi Roro Kidul. The realization struck him with a cold, bitter weight. He had promised her. He had sworn to return and tell the truth. But a part of him, no, a large part, wished to forget, to run from the haunting legacy she had left in him. But no matter how hard he tried, the image of her would not fade. The way she had looked at him, pleading for someone, anyone, to remember who she was before the curse, before the throne. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice, soft, echoing from within, like the sound of the ocean beneath a storm. "You will never forget me, but you will carry my burden." He closed his eyes, rubbing his temples. What now? He thought of Ibu Shri, her warnings, her preparation. It was only a matter of time before the restless spirits who had been drawn into Nyi Roro Kidul's realm would seek him out. Perhaps they already were. The ocean always called to those who knew its secrets. Dimas took a slow breath, steadying himself. He rose shakily to his feet, casting a long, lingering glance at the sea. Somewhere deep within it, she still watched, waiting. Suddenly, a shape caught his eye, tattered clothing fluttering in the wind. It was Ibu Shri. She had been waiting, standing in the shadow of the trees, her presence calm but watchful. "How?" Dimas asked, his voice hoarse. "You are the one who crossed to her realm. That doesn't happen by accident." Ibu Shri's eyes were soft but knowing. "I knew the moment you set foot near the water. The sea never forgets those it touches." Dimas nodded slowly, uncertain. "It won't let me go." "Of course it won't," she said, her voice gentle. "The sea never gives up what it claims. But it's not the sea you should fear. It's the story it wants you to tell. The truth? The truth of the girl they drowned? The truth of the queen they made into a legend." He swallowed hard. "But what will happen to me? I can feel it. In my skin, in my bones. It's changing me. Just like her." Ibu Shri placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "You've seen the truth. The world doesn't want that truth. The queen won't rest until it's shared, until the curse is known. You may never be the same again." Dimas took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the sea on his shoulders. "But I won't forget her," he whispered. "I know. Ibu Shri said quietly, and that's why you'll be the one to carry her story until the end of your days. As he stared out at the endless expanse of the ocean, a feeling of inevitability settled over him. The sea would always call to him, and in the end, perhaps it was true. He was part of her story now. The waves crashed against the rocks, and in the roar, he thought he heard her voice once more, soft, almost a lullaby. Remember me. Years passed, but the sea never released its hold on Dimas. He returned to the village, yet the village could never feel like home again. He felt its gaze upon him wherever he went, the ocean's distant whisper following him, drawing him back toward the shore, urging him to remember. He became something between two worlds, neither fully alive nor dead, trapped in the space between. No one else could hear the call. Only he could feel the tug of the sea in his bones, its ancient pull growing stronger with each passing year. Sometimes, in the quiet of night, he would stand at the edge of the cliff, staring out at the endless stretch of water. The waves lapped at the rocks below like a beckoning hand, and Dimas could almost see her face in the foam, the glowing eyes of Nyi Roro Kidul, watching him from the depths. He often wondered if he was meant to die there, consumed by the very ocean that had marked him. But every time something inside him refused to succumb. One day, years after his first journey into her realm, a storm gathered off the coast. The air grew thick with pressure, and the wind howled as the sky darkened to a deep green. Dimas stood on the shore, the familiar weight of the sea pulling at his heart. The storm raged, lightning cracking through the sky as if the heavens themselves were angry. And then, as the wind tore at the earth, the sea rose with a force unlike anything he had ever felt. It was her. Nyi Roro Kidul. The water churned with a fury that seemed to answer her summons. Dimas felt the power in it, the call of a queen reclaiming what was once hers. He closed his eyes, knowing this moment would come eventually. He had been marked, chosen by the sea, and now it was time to pay the price. In the distance, he saw a shape emerging from the water, tall and regal, her form clad in flowing seaweed and coral. Nyi Roro Kidul rose from the depths like a creature of myth, her green eyes alight with an ancient fire. She was no longer the girl who had been cast away, nor the queen who had ruled over the ocean's endless expanse. She was both and neither, a manifestation of the sea itself, with its power, its beauty, and its rage. "You have fulfilled your promise," she said, her voice echoing like 1,000 waves crashing against the shore. "And now, you will become part of my story." Dimas stepped forward, his heart heavy with the truth. "I am yours, as I always was." Her gaze softened, just for a moment. "But not as you think. You are not my prisoner. You are my witness. And that will be your burden for as long as you live." She raised her hand, and the storm calmed. The waters settling as if the earth had taken a deep breath. The weight of her presence pressed down on Dimas, but it no longer felt like a curse. It felt like something deeper, an understanding. He had never truly been free, but neither had he ever been fully trapped. "Will you forget me?" she asked. "No," Dimas replied, his voice steady. "I will never forget you. I will carry your story, your truth, until the end of my days." A small smile played at the corners of Nyi Roro Kidul's lips. "Then go and live, but remember, the sea never forgets." And with that, she faded, her form dissolving into the mist, leaving Dimas standing alone on the shore. The waves continued to crash against the rocks, but now he knew their rhythm. He had become part of the eternal tide. Dimas left the village soon after. He traveled far, sharing the story of the Queen of the Southern Sea with those who would listen. His tale was met with disbelief, fear, and wonder. But he told it all the same, of the girl, the curse, and the queen who had never been truly free. And as he told it, he could still hear her voice in his mind, gentle but unwavering. "Remember me." The sea never forgot, and neither would he.